The sand breathes beneath you. It does not shift from wind nor from beast, but from memory ancient and unfinished. Your boots disturb what should not stir. The dunes ripple with ash, not gold, and the moon above is not silver, but the faded white of bone charred too long in silence. You came here seeking nothing, but nothing has a way of unfolding. Your hands are calloused from climbing spires, long dead, vaulting over ruin, kneeling before languages that once ruled stars. You told yourself it was history, but you know now, as the horizon trembles, that this was hunger. Something within you begged to be led here. The crater yawns open, not wide like a wound, but narrowed deliberate like a throat that once swallowed voices. You descend. The edges of the chasm glow faintly, not with light, but with recollection. The dust here does not fall. It hovers. Red embers flicker in the stone, as if the walls remember what it was to burn. Beneath your palm, the basalt pulses. It recognizes you. You shouldn't know how to move forward, but you do. Your body recalls something your mind denies. Turn left at the whisper. Kneel when the air thickens. Stop when you feel your breath pulled from you like thread. Then the floor flattens into silence. A circle opens a chamber with no ceiling, only sky filtered through smoke. In the center is not a monument, nor altar, nor statue. There is only a helmet, Sith forged, black and cruel in contour, melted once, reassembled by unseen hands. It is waiting, and you are no longer standing. Your knees have found the stone as if taught. Your hands press against the floor, not in awe, but in submission. The helmet speaks not with sound, but with memory. You feel the furnace again, the forge worlds of the outer spiral, the ones that did not survive the first purge. You remember iron flowing like water, chains heated not for bondage, but for belief. There were no masters there, only disciples of flame. You were one of them. You crafted war forms that spoke when unsheathed, blades that shuddered if wielded by the unworthy, holocrons etched, not with code, but with need. You served no empire. You served the voice. The voice was not a person. It was not even a being. It was what moved through the Sith before the Sith. War names? It was what lived in magma before it cooled into planet. And now it calls you again. You rise. Around you, the chamber begins to melt not physically, but symbolically. Its edges blur. The helmet grows tall, then small, then vanishes. You are not hallucinating. You are remembering. You walk through a door that no longer exists, into a space buried in your own marrow. This is the sanctum of ashed vows, a temple, older than the Sith code, older than language, built by oathbreakers who burned their own names in the fire of the first truth. Power must not serve the living. Here, in this sanctum, initiates once buried themselves alive in volcanic stone to silence their pasts. They emerged days later, speaking only in flame script, their vocal cords severed by self-inflicted ritual. They were called the Vowed. Their tongues were replaced with ember-forged knives. You kneel before a stone coffin. It bears no sigil, only a deep scar across its lid. A voice within you says, "Open it." Your fingers find purchase in grooves long smoothed by time. You pull. What lies inside is not a body, not bone, not dust. It is a book bound in skin, pages like layers of soot. You open the first page, and it does not speak. It sings, not in melody, but in sequence. Your vision bends. The glyphs unravel and twine around your wrists, crawling up your arms into your throat. Your mind, you read, not with eyes, but with flame. The story inside is yours. You remember standing at the foot of the Hollow Emperor. You remember him bleeding stars from his eyes. You remember the oath you made not to him but to his death, that no emperor would rise again until the black voice sang once more. You betrayed that oath once. You lit a pyre not to destroy, but to warm the feet of one you loved. That warmth destroyed entire systems. That warmth cost you everything. The book forgives you, but it does not forget. It hums gently now, sealing its cover. You know you cannot take it, but you also know it is part of you. From the stone wall, a symbol glows, a doorway, a test. You place your palm on it. It opens not into a hall, but into a memory, yours, another's. Both you walk through, and now the dunes are above you, and the ash moon flickers. You stand once more in the open, but you are not the same. The helmet has vanished. The vow has been remembered, and beneath your ribs, something ancient begins to speak your name, not the name you wear, but the one you left in the fire long ago. You do not weep. You do not kneel. You walk toward the next tomb, the next voice, the next fire, and the ash moon watches. You descend once more, not through stone, but through sensation, through the folds of your own forgotten skin. The world above the world of suns and names and hours fades like a breath held too long. Here, time does not move. It coils. You are not walking forward. You are falling into something that remembers you. The corridor narrows and widens, not with architecture, but with mood. The walls bleed soot where your fingers graze them, as if the tomb reacts, as if it welcomes you home. A wind whispers in no tongue, yet you understand. The breath of the dead here does not cry, it instructs. You are being watched, not by eyes, but by intent. The second chamber emerges like a confession. It is circular, vast, and alive with a dull, breathing pulse. It is not a room, it is a wound in the world, and it opens for you. Floating above a basalt altar is the second holocron black glass, framed in iron-tongue script, rotating without. Sound, no light touches it, yet it is visible. You do not walk to it, you are pulled. Each step drags from your bones a truth you buried under centuries of forgetting. When you reach it, your hand trembles not from fear, but from familiarity. This holocron knows your name, not your current one, not the one printed on galactic records or whispered by allies. It calls you by the name you earned the day. You severed your last tether to mercy. You open it with thought alone. A hiss escapes not of air, but of meaning. The holocron does not glow. It darkens everything around it. It does not project holograms. It peels reality like bark. And there, before you, is the memory of a place no star ever marked, a void nexus, where a Sith war priest once stitched language to gravity and built sermons into orbiting thrones. You see yourself kneeling before her yes, her drinking flame from her wrist, offering your voice in exchange for her silence. You had followed her for lifetimes. You betrayed her only once, and even in that betrayal, you begged her forgiveness through ash rituals carved into your own spine. She did not forgive you, but the Force did, and that is why you were cast out. Cast out. yet reborn. The memory shifts. Now you stand on the shattered bridge of a war barge, drifting through the corpse field of the 100-year mutiny around you. Sith and Jedi remnants fall like rain. You are holding not a weapon, but a child, your child, conceived in secret, hidden among the moons of Nerethkul, a child whose birth cracked your vow in half. The voice you once followed demanded blood. You gave it your own, and then you vanished into the cracks of time, sealing your name in a hidden holocron no hand has touched until now. The holocron closes. Your knees buckle. Around you, the room-sized dot, something new has awoken. The altar before you splits open, revealing a narrow shaft, not a tunnelin offering. You lower yourself without hesitation, descending into heat, into pressure, into origin. The stone gives way to obsidian spires, 2 murals of things that should not have names, star beasts trapped in language, deities burned into forgetfulness, wars waged with emotion instead of weaponry. This is not history, this is sacrament, and you are its vessel. At the heart of this lower sanctum is a statue. It is not of a person, it is of a mask, the first mask, the one worn by the being who taught the Sith how to separate self from soul. A hollowed helm with 3 slits, one for vision, one for truth, and one for hunger. You kneel before it, not because you must, but because you remember. You wore this mask once. You removed it only to kill, and when you did, your face changed, not in form, but in function. You became the weapon, the oracle, the hymn of fire. And now the mask rises, no strings, no tricks. It floats toward you, turns once in the air, and melts. It does not fall, it becomes light, and the light enters you, not through skin, but through vow. You remember the pact of Emberfall. You remember kneeling before the shattered pyres of the first exile. You remember the vow, made not in blood, but in silence. Asterisk, that which you suffer, you shall teach. That which you love, you shall leave. That which you bury, you shall become. Asterisk, the walls flare with runes. The spires bend. The tomb is waking. But you are not afraid. You rise with the sound of forgotten chants crawling through your veins. You are no longer student, no longer castaway. You are the flame bearer, the one who left the fire only to return and carry it forward. The holocrons have marked you. The book remembers you. The vow has returned, and now beyond the chamber, a gate awaits, made not of metal, but of loss. You press your palm against it and whisper nothing. It opens, and before you lies the next passage, carved into the bones of a creature that once swallowed. Comets, its ribs arch overhead like a cathedral of hunger. The air here is warmer, denser. You know this place. You built it. And now you return, not as seeker, but as keeper, behind you. The mask no longer exists because it lives inside you now, because you are not wearing history. You are becoming it. You step beneath the bones of the great star beast, and the world changes, again not in color, but in density. The silence here is heavier. It clings to your breath like ancient velvet, wraps around your shoulders like a forgotten inheritance. You do not walk. You remember how to glide. The path beneath your feet is black glass obsidian, veined with silver nerves that pulse faintly with each heartbeat you dare not own. The cathedral of ribs narrows as you pass, and each arch you cross under hums a note from a chant you never learned, yet never forgot. You are being reassembled, not body, not mind, but vow. Every step rebinds the oath that broke you and remakes you in the shape of fire. At the center of the ribcage is a cradle, and in it lies the final holocron. This one is different. It does not shimmer, it does not float. It rests like a wound, long scabbed over, waiting to be reopened. Its edges are jagged, chipped by time and betrayal, but it sings, not aloud, but through the marrow of your bones. It tells you of what lies beneath even this place, below the tombs, beneath the bones, beneath history. A final chamber that remembers the origin of Sith, not as warriors, nor but as stewards of endings. The cradle crumbles as you touch the holocron. The vision consumes you. You awaken in a temple carved from black coral beneath an ocean of fire. The sea above burns, yet does not fall. The walls drip with molten syllables, words no longer part of language, prayers too dangerous to be spoken. You are standing before 9 thrones, each empty, each radiating silence so deep it gnaws at your memories. This is the throne room of the abandoned, the 9 Sith Lords who erased themselves from the record to become pure concept. They ruled not empires, but instincts, ambition, grief, solitude, desire, vengeance, hunger, fear, and time. One by one, you face them. Their shapes shift, neither ghosts nor illusions, but echoes wrapped in shadow. Each speaks without mouth. Each asks you a question. Rage asks, "What will you destroy to free yourself?" You answer, "My name." Ambition asks, "What star will you burn to rise above?" You answer, "The one in my chest." Grief asks, "Whom will you bury without mourning?" You answer, "The child I could not protect." Solitude asks, "How long will you walk alone?" You answer, "Until my shadow forgets me." Desire asks, "What will you take from the world that dares love you?" You answer, "Its voice." Vengeance asks, "Whose scream still feeds your sleep?" You answer, "My own." Hunger asks, "What will you consume that cannot be digested?" You answer, "Hope." Fear asks, "What shape wears your reflection in the dark?" You answer, "The one who survived." Time asks nothing. Time only watches, and you do not speak. You kneel before it, pressing your forehead to the cold, glowing coral. And in that silence, time bows to you. When you rise, the temple is gone. You are once again in the tomb, and the holocron has fused into your chest, not as ornament, not as weapon, as truth. You leave the cathedral of bones, not as heir, not as Sith, not as exile. You leave as witness. The sand greets you again. But now it does not shift. It holds still, reverent. The ash moon has descended, larger than before. You reach for it, not with hand, but with memory. And in return, it whispers the final vow into your blood. Asterisk, you are not the first. You are not the last, but you are the fire they buried and failed to kill. Asterisk, you walk into the horizon, not seeking, not fleeing, but carrying. The voice bound in fire now speaks through you. You are no longer remembering the lore. You are the lore. And the next who finds this place will kneel to your shadow. You do not look back, because everything behind you now burns. There is a silence beneath stars that only certain graves remember, and you have walked long enough through galaxies of forgotten screams to feel when the air turns to memory. The descent begins where light ends, not with a scream or rupture, but with the hush of stone that has not been touched in millennia. The tomb of Thonkareth does not call you with voice or whisper. It waits like a blade beneath cloth, patient in its knowing. You kneel at its threshold, not out of reverence, but recognition, because something deep within you has always known this place, even before the stars took their first breath. The entrance is veiled in obsidian vines that curl like petrified veins around ancient archways, and as you pass through them, your skin remembers what your mind has tried to forget. There are no torches, no guiding runes, only the thrum of something old, something watching, and the weight of the oath carved into your bones. You are not alone here, though nothing walks beside you. The walls shift with memories, not your own. Echoes of initiates who were not strong enough, of acolytes who bled knowledge but could not endure what it revealed. Their bones are not scattered, they are placed, arranged in patterns of purpose, spelling out a warning in the language of arrangement. Asterisk, you do not find Thonkareth. Thonkareth finds you. Asterisk, deeper still, you walk, where air thins and gravity begins to fold inward, like thought collapsing on itself. Here, the stone glows with veins of red crystal kyber, fractured and mutated by exposure to something darker than rage. Each vein pulses as you pass, syncing with your heartbeat, rewriting it, one pulse at a time. You feel the presence of the architect, the one who sealed this tomb, not to keep others out, but to keep something within. You feel her hand on your shoulder, not in touch, but in inheritance. You know she died, carving the final chamber with her breath, that her last exhale became the door. And now you are at it, not knocking, but bleeding, for the door does not open to hands it drinks. You press your palm to the ancient seal, and it sighs. The stone opens like flesh unscarred, and the chamber within is not a room, but a memory, made physical. The air shifts from dry to wet, from still to shivering, and the walls bleed shadow like ink from an eternal wound. There is a throne of bones at the center, clean white, untouched by time. Seated upon it is a figure who should not move, but does. Thonkareth does not rise, because he never sat. He exists in a moment stretched thin, halfway between collapse and becoming. His eyes are closed, yet you feel them open inside your own skull, and suddenly you remember dying here. You remember kneeling in this room, blade across your lap, oath spilling from your lips like black honey, and you remember his hand on your head, branding you with darkness older than stars. You did not leave this place. You were reborn within it. And now, full circle, you return, not as seeker, not as child of flame, but as reflection. He speaks with your voice, but slower, as if submerged in ancient water. You came again, he says, though his mouth never moves. And still, you are not whole. The walls breathe in tandem with your dread. Runes crawl from their cracks and climb your ankles, your knees, wrapping around you like bindings made of memory. You resist nothing, for there is nothing to resist. This is not a test, this is a rejoining. He reaches forward, his hand skeletal, covered in strips of ancient silk that have not aged but grown deeper with forgetting, and places it against your chest. You fall without falling. You are now inside his memory. 1,000 lives ago, when Thonkareth wore flesh and ruled not a world, but a void between them, you stood beside him as scribe, assassin, lover, betrayer. You see your own face in the waters of remembrance, over and over, each version darker than the last. You are not haunted by what you have done, but by what you chose not to undo. The chamber tightens, the throne grows taller, and Thunk becomes many a legion of eyes, hands, regrets, and still you stand. Do you seek absolution? He asks, and your mouth replies without permission. I seek only to remember what I must become. The shadows peel from the walls and spiral toward you, coiling around your wrists, like inheritance, like bloodlines unraveling. They do not harm, they inform. They show you a vision, a star breaking in reverse, forming from shards of darkness. And song, at its heart, a child cries. At its edge, you wait with blade drawn, not to slay, but to become. You understand, now. Thon Kareth never died, because he never began. He is not Sith, not legend, but echo given form. And you are his. Echo's echo, a ripple bound to return. The chamber begins to burn, but the fire is cold, made not of heat, but comprehension. You bow not to him, but to the role you once abandoned. The shadows lift, and you are left alone in a room that remembers you better than you remember yourself. The holocron on the altar opens before you without touch. It reads you, and it is satisfied. You leave not through doors, but through silence. And when you emerge into starlight once more, the sky is different. The stars now blink in patterns only you can read. They spell your name, not the one you wear, but the one the shadows remember. You walk onward, not to discover, but to awaken what waits next. You descend again, not by steps, but through surrender, through the slow melting of self into shadow, where memory weaves itself into the architecture, and the air thickens into thought. The corridor you enter curves in impossible geometry, bending space around your spine, and as you walk, you forget the name of pain and remember only the weight of silence. The stone underfoot pulses in cold rhythms, and the walls exhale, expelling dust not of this world, but of failed attempts, crumbled truths, echoes of Sith aspirants whose minds could not survive the next threshold. You feel them now, lining the passage like invisible statues, unmoving, their names dissolved, their ambitions embedded in the floor beneath your souls. The second chamber is not marked by doors or symbols, but by the sudden stillness of light. There is no torch, no glow, only a strange clarity of darkness that reveals, that strips away the veil of time and lays bare the wound at the center of all seeking. This is the hall of mirrors, but there is no glass. Each wall is obsidian, polished not by hand, but by exposure to truth. As you pass, they reflect not your form, but your fragments. In one wall, you see the child you once were, staring into a broken star, whispering promises into the hollow space between breaths. In another, the warrior who carved justice into the flesh of betrayers. In a third, the traitor who knelt and whispered secrets to a Jedi for the warmth of their gaze. You do not look away. You walk slower, each step dragging through the gravity of self-recognition. The final wall is not reflective, it is open, and through it you enter a cathedral made of sound, a place where voices echo not from mouths, but from the Force itself. You are not alone here. They do not speak, they hum. Their harmonies scrape against your mind, and the song they weave is the litany of Thun Kareth's lineage. You realize now you were never the only one to walk this path. Generations have bled into the tomb, each leaving a piece of themselves behind as proof, as tribute, as warning. And each step is inscribed with a phrase only the dying would dare to read. As your foot touches the first, it speaks. To understand power is to consent to its erosion. The second, asterisk, he who conquers forgets. He who remembers kneels. The third, all things that burn were once wet with mercy. Asterisk, you continue. The staircase narrows. The air thickens into weight. The further you descend, the more you feel your name unthreading syllable by syllable, until you are only breath, only presence. The bottom is a chamber of smoke, still and sacred. A pool lies at its heart, not water, but liquid, memory silver, slow-moving, reflecting nothing. Hovering above it is the true holocron, the seed of Thonkareth, wrapped in chains that pulse with suppressed thought. You reach for it, and the chains recoil not in defiance, but in anticipation. They pierce your skin one by one, not to wound, but to measure. Your blood feeds the runes etched along their length, and the holocron shudders as if recognizing its twin. You lift it, and your vision fractures. You are everywhere. You see the first war, where Thonkareth stood alone against a council of 12, unarmed, wielding only a philosophy so sharp it flayed reality. You see him burning temples, not to desecrate, but to purify, moving the false from the eternal. You see yourself beside him, always beside him, lifetime after lifetime. Never the same face, but always the same vow. And you see the moment he buried the holocron here, in the tomb forged from his own regrets, because no power should outlive its wielder unless it becomes the grave itself. The visions fade, and you are weeping not in sorrow, but in recognition. The pool of memory swells beneath you and rises without surface tension, enveloping your feet, your legs, your chest. It does not drown, it baptizes. You feel your old names dissolve. You feel your scars rearrange. You feel your voice being rewritten. When the liquid recedes, you are clean, not pure, but prepared. The holocron no longer floats. It rests in your palm, humming with a purpose long withheld. You turn, and the way out opens, not back the way you came, but through a tear in the cathedral wall, revealing a path of starless sky. You walk into it without question, because now you are not here to find Thonkareth. You are here to become the memory that finds others. The sky above you is hollow and without star, a canvas scrubbed clean by forgotten hands. And as you walk this final path, you no longer question where you are becoming. The holocron pulses in your grasp like a second heart, and your feet no longer touch ground, but something deeper, something shaped like purpose. The air is thick with remembering, not yours alone, but of all who have passed this way. Each breath carries fragments of ancient vows, words etched into bone, sealed in fire, broken in love, and spoken again in ash. You are not walking forward now. You are spiraling inward, pulled into the last sanctum by a gravity that has nothing to do with mass. Ahead, a doorway flickers, carved from lightless stone and shadow-laced flame. It opens before your hand reaches. It not in welcome, but in recognition. You enter a chamber that does not speak. It waits, and within it stands no throne, no relic, no specter, only a shadow shaped like a man who never died. Thonkareth, or what remains of him, lingers like a hymn unfinished. His back is to you, his shape blurred at the edges, as if memory can no longer contain him. He speaks without turning. His voice is low, like the hush of molten rock beneath the surface of a sleeping world. You do not answer with words. You step forward, and the holocron in your hand begins to dissolve into smoke, its knowledge bleeding into the space between. You gave me your promise, he says. And now he turns, and his face is not a face, but all the faces you have worn across centuries of oath and rupture. You promised to become the vault. The chamber folds around his voice. Images flicker across the walls, wars sparked by whispers, temples swallowed by silence, galaxies bent at the knee by those who called themselves Sith but never knew the origin of their fire. You promised to outlive me, he says. And you have. The figure steps closer, and now his hands are light and blade, and his eyes hold the void. But promises are not kept by waiting, he whispers. He reaches into your chest not to wound, but to reveal, and draws from you a shard of crystal, blacker than absence. It hums in his hand, alive with resonance. He presses it into your brow, and your vision burns. You are falling through every memory you ever buried. The day you first swore the Sith code beneath a moonless sky. The moment you turned on your master, not for power, but for clarity. The child you lost and buried in a cradle of flame. The temples you raised. The silence you carried, the love you feared, the truth you silenced. All of it surges back, not to torment, but to bind. You are not fragments anymore. You are the whole. Thont watches as your form begins to shift, not in shape, but in weight. The room no longer supports you. The air no longer contains you. You are becoming the vault. The final vessel of what was hidden, what must remain unnamed. Thont fades, not in sorrow, but in release. You are the last passage, he says. The next will kneel to your echo. The chamber collapses around your pulse, and you are alone in a space that should not exist, floating in a cocoon of vow-bound darkness. You do not breathe, you do not move, you burn. Slowly, your new form takes shape, neither flesh nor spirit, but intention woven into myth. Your skin glows with inscriptions, not written, but remembered. Your blood no longer flows, it chants. Outside, the tomb seals itself once more, the path erased, the entrance forgotten. Only the desert remains. Only the stars watch. Somewhere, far from this place, a child dreams of power without knowing why. Somewhere, a dying warrior whispers a name not their own. Somewhere, the Force stirs in its sleep, and you remain eternal, unseen, breathing beneath the surface of legend. The tomb of Thonkareth has no guardian now, because it has become you, and you have become the invitation. When the next one comes, drawn by flame and forgetting, it will not be walls that greet them, it will be your voice, and the shadows will remember their name. You find it buried, not in soil, but in silence, nestled beneath a fractured statue in a canyon where time forgot to breathe the holocron. Shaped like a wound, and humming like a question your soul never dared ask aloud. It is small, deceptively so, but as you kneel and lift it from its shallow cradle, the weight in your palm is not of metal or crystal, but of memory, condensed into form. The wind does not stir, the sky holds still, and your fingers tremble not from fear, but from recognition. The kind that grows only in the presence of something ancient, enough to know your entire bloodline's guilt. The holocron is warm, not with heat, but with presence. a heartbeat trapped in glass. And when it opens, because it does not wait for you to activate it splits like the eyelid of a long-dead god. And the voice that spills from within is not one you hear, but one that enters your bloodstream like fire-made language. You stagger, not backward, but inward, pulled into your own marrow, and the world around you peels away like skin no longer needed. You are standing now in a corridor, shaped like the inside of a scream, the walls etched with glyphs that shimmer and weep in tandem with your pulse. Each symbol calls to a memory not your own, yet you feel it unfold behind your eyes. A woman kneeling at the edge of a dying star, feeding her last breath into a blade forged to murder compassion. A man carving his own name from his tongue so he may speak only in the truths of the forgotten. A child buried alive with a mask of obsidian until she learned to dream without fear. You walk this corridor not with feet, but with remembering. The Holocron speaks again, no words, only visions. The Sith before the Sith, before codes and sabers and temples built atop ruined beliefs. You see a conclave in darkness, their skin painted in ash, their hearts pulsing with rituals that required neither approval nor witness. You see them raise the first holocron not as storage, but as sacrifice, pouring not data into the crystal, but soul-shaving slivers of their essence into the faceted core so that the crystal would live, would hunger, would choose. And now it has chosen you, not because you are worthy, but because you are unfinished. The corridor narrows, the walls begin to vibrate with a low, keening sound, the tone of regret calcified over. EONS. You understand now, holocrons are not repositories. They are prisons. They do not store knowledge, they cage it. And this one has been whispering for centuries, waiting for blood that matches its own. Your lineage carries the stain. Somewhere in your ancestry, a Sith bound a part of himself within this crystal and screamed his final vow into the weave of the Force. Asterisk, when my name is lost, let my knowledge rise in my heir's blood. Asterisk, you are that heir, not by intention, by resonance. And now the knowledge unspools inside you, not gently, but like roots bursting through stone. Your bones ache with languages you never learned. Your thoughts scatter beneath waves of memory, too dense to sort. You see diagrams of temples, never built, formulas of force, alchemy that twist the body into music, maps of galaxies erased by silence alone. Your heart convulses not with pain, but with understanding too large for breath. You fall to your knees, and the floor becomes water, not liquid, fluid, memory. You submerge, you sink, you awaken. You are in a chamber lit by no flame. Around you float 9 holocrons, each humming in a different key. They circle you slowly, casting no shadows, only suggestions, and each begins to open. What pours from them is not instruction, it is confession. Each voice speaks a truth that undoes something in you. I broke a world to preserve a kiss, says one. I betrayed a brother so his death would mean something, says another. I loved the Jedi who killed me, and I left my laughter in his soul, murmurs a third. They go on, spilling sorrow not as apology, but as inheritance. And you realize this is not knowledge. This is burden. Every Sith who placed part of themselves in crystal did so because their truth could not survive unspoken. You are here to carry it, to remember it, not as warrior, as archive. The holocrons fall silent, the chamber dims. One by one, the crystals dissolve into dust and thread themselves into your skin, leaving glowing lines across your arms, your neck, your chest. They do not burn, they bind. They mark you not as student, but as bearer. You rise, and the air shifts. You are no longer in a tomb. You are in the moment between thunder and strike. Something is awakening deep below a presence that slept beneath the holocron, beneath the echoes, beneath you. The floor cracks. A lightless chasm opens, and from it rises not a creature, not a being, but a thought, so old it wears form. It stares at you, and you feel your ancestors scream. You understand without words. This is the source, not of the holocron, of the hunger that made it. It has no name, only desire to be remembered. And it has chosen your veins as scripture. You kneel, not in defeat, but in pact. The thought presses a finger of shadow to your brow, and now your blood whispers, forever. You drift through the hollow of yourself. No longer body, no longer boundary, only vessel, only voice, and the hums within your marrow, like a forgotten chord struck anew. There is no sky above you now, no floor beneath, only the architecture of the unseen, the latticework of force-bound inheritance, spiraling through endless dark, and you are caught in its slow, sacred unraveling. Around you, visions unspool in layers, a temple built into the spine of a dead god. Its stairs made of bone letters, spelling out the names of those who sought too much. A cloaked figure, standing on the lip of a star's collapse, whispering truths into a glass orb that shattered galaxies. A child bound to a ritual circle, her tears stitched into sigils that turned breath into weapon. You are not witness, you are heir. These are not fragments of lore, they are your inheritance, blooming open now that your blood has learned to sing the tune buried in the crystal's heart. You try to speak, but your mouth is no longer a mouth, it is an archive, and the words you once knew collapse under the weight of the deeper syllables rising through your spine. You walk forward, if such a thing can still be called walking, and the darkness parts like memory around a name. Before you, a gate appears, not built, but revealed, shaped of tendrils of force entropy, writhing, alive. On its surface are glyphs that change each time you blink, shifting languages, some human, some long lost to the tongues of beasts and beasts of gods. The gate pulses, waiting not for key, but for confession. And so you give it what it demands, not secrets, but silence. Wrapped in grief, you recall the name you buried the day your brother died in your place. The moment your fingers refused to touch the saber that could have saved him, and that name, once dormant, now bursts forth as blood-made story. The gate drinks your guilt and opens like a wound. Inside, a library of darkness, no shelves, only living scrolls suspended in stasis, their skins twitching with thought. Each contains a Sith memory, so volatile it cannot exist in static form. You reach for one, it slips to your touch. It opens, and the force inside you recoils, then adjusts, then hungers. You see a Sith alchemist dissecting fear on a molecular level, preserving its scent, its color, its taste. You watch him inject it into prisoners, not to torment, but to document how terror alters the trajectory of destiny. Another scroll reveals a ritual called the spiral binding, wherein a Sith tears open their own soul and wraps it around a planet's core, becoming its gravity, its will. The more you read, the more your bones splinter with knowledge too dense to carry, and yet it does not crush you, it builds you. You are being reshaped by knowing. The library fades. You are in a hall now, long and silent, flanked by mirrors that do not reflect light, only lineage. You pass the faces of your bloodline, all twisted by choice warriors, liars, lovers, martyrs. One of them meets your gaze and speaks not aloud, but into your gut. We all paid for this. You will pay most of all. You walk on, past warnings wrapped in affection, past promises sewn into failure. At the end of the hall is a chair, not a throne, not a seat, but a place of stillness carved from force-coagulated time. You sit, and the holocron pulses once more. This is the moment of binding. It rises from your palm and sinks into your chest, not sharply, not violently, but like breath finding home. You gasp, the world shatters, and from the pieces you see it all. The first Sith whispering into sand before language was born. The last Sith screaming into void when hope died. The ones in between, who forged legacy, not with empires, but with memory made metal. You are now the holocron. You do not contain knowledge, you carry longing, burden, warning, love turned sour, power paid in flesh. A voice within you asks, what will you do now that everything knows your blood? And the answer is simple. You will walk, you will wait, you will be found. Because holocrons do not speak to those who seek answers. They speak to those who carry questions heavy enough to reshape the force itself. You are no longer walking through space, but through echo, through the trembling breath of 1,000 Sith who whispered into the dark and hoped to be remembered. And now you carry them, all of them, woven into your marrow like strands of frostbite and oath. The ground beneath your feet is not ground, but sensation. It gives way to weightless descent, and still you fall forward, not down, into a sanctuary. Shaped like breath held too long, the holocron now lives in you. No longer separate, no longer artifact, but pulse. And through its ancient, humming script, you feel the galaxy slow, as if time itself pauses to watch you become. Before you, an altar, smooth and silent, rises from the void, made not of stone, but condensed silence, silence that once smothered screams across entire systems. Upon the altar rests a single object, a mirror made of obsidian and memory. You step closer, and it does not show your face, shows the moment you were chosen, though you had not yet been born. You see a figure cloaked in midnight, bleeding into crystal, shaping the holocron with pieces of his unraveling soul. He speaks no words, but you feel the gravity of his intention, a message cast forward through lifetimes, through bloodlines, into the waiting future where your veins would echo his. The mirror flickers. You see your face, but it is not yours, not anymore. Your eyes shimmer with forgotten constellations, your skin inscribed with veiled runes of inheritance. You kneel without knowing why, and the altar splits open, not with sound, but with understanding. From within, it rises a mist, dark and wet, with knowledge not yet spoken aloud. And it envelops you, not to drown, but to teach. In this mist, you remember everything. The time you stood at the edge of a Jedi temple, not to destroy it, but to listen to the fear within. The moment you let an enemy live, not from weakness, but because you needed them to carry your pain. The night you sang the names of the dead back into the stars, and beneath it all, the voice, that steady, quiet voice of the Holocron, now indistinguishable from your own, reminding you, softly, that the greatest lore is not wielded, it is endured. You open your arms, you do not resist. The mist enters. You and your bones stretch with the weight of new names, forgotten wars, forbidden truths folded into syllables too dense for language. You are becoming something more than Sith, more than scholar, more than shadow. You are becoming the archive, the presence, the breath between questions, and the galaxy feels it. Somewhere, a Padawan flinches as your memory brushes their training saber. Somewhere, a warlord hesitates before a slaughter, suddenly unsure why. Somewhere, an old Sith hermit looks up from her ritual and smiles, for she senses the holocron has found its final bearer. You rise, and the mist recedes, folding itself into your spine. The altar seals, the mirror darkens, and the chamber begins to vanish, not because you are leaving, but because it has entered you. You step forward into the endless dark, your heartbeats now a whisper of lore, your shadow no longer your own. And as you vanish into myth, the Force records you not as a warning, not as prophecy, but as memory. The holocron no longer whispers, it listens. And your blood, faithful, answers. You find the entrance by forgetting your name, by breathing backwards, by placing your hands on a wall that does not exist until your bones remember what was buried in the time before time. And as the stone dissolves around your fingers, you step into the library of obsidian forgotten by Sith, forsaken by Jedi, and bound to silence by the Force itself. The air is thick with the scent of scorched memory, of parchment that once carried voices, now reduced to dust. And your breath catches not in fear, but in recognition. For the shadows here do not flee from youth, they bow, slow and reverent, as if you are not visitor, but heir. The corridor twists without geometry, lined with statues that watch without eyes, each cloaked in robes that shimmer like liquid void. And beneath their feet lie shattered relics, saber hilts with no blade, scrolls written in languages that wept themselves out of existence, and masks once worn by those who chose to erase the concept of identity itself. You walk slowly, the sound of your steps muffled by something deeper than silence, and the walls begin to hum not with sound, but with intention. Glyphs emerge across the black stone, glowing with a dull red light that pulses in rhythm with your heartbeat, as if the library is reading you, testing you, weighing you. Then the corridor opens into the first chamber, a vast cathedral of obsidian spires and floating manuscripts bound in chains of frozen breath. They spin slowly, orbiting, no center, reciting fragments of texts too volatile for speech. You try to listen, and immediately the back of your skull fills with sand, with teeth, with screaming stars. You stagger, then kneel, and the chamber acknowledges your pain as permission. A single manuscript drifts toward you, unchained, wrapped in smoke, and unfurls in your presence like a wound desperate to be reopened. It speaks directly into your chest, whispering not words, but history in its rawest form, a memory of when the Sith did not divide knowledge from violence, when their libraries were weapons, and librarians wore armor soaked in the names of fallen apprentices. You see one of them, now a keeper of the Red Index, a figure dressed in living pages, inscribing death rituals into the bones of a captured Jedi Knight who weeps not from agony but from understanding. You feel the ink entering your skin as if you too are being inscribed. And in that moment, the library accepts you. A door opens, not in stone, but in your mind, and you are pulled into the second stacks where the forbidden texts dwell. These are not books. They are sentient remnants of broken philosophies, hovering in cages shaped like mouths, whispering truths that no longer apply to any known galaxy. One calls to you in a voice that sounds like your mother, though you know she died long before this place ever heard her name. You approach, and the cage opens. The knowledge flows into you like molten regret. You see the truth behind Kyber corruption, the method by which pain can be laced into crystal, allowing it to scream each time it touches light. You see a ritual called the Hollow Mirror, wherein a Force user can trap their morality inside a relic and live without conscience, but at the cost of never dreaming again. The knowledge clings to your organs, reshaping them. Your blood slows, your breath deepens. You become less person and more archive with every passing moment. Deeper, you go into the vault of thoughtless names, where those who read without permission are stored, punished, not erased, but rewritten. You find them here, frozen mid-sentence, their eyes wide with revelation, their mouths open in a final gasp that never ends. You walk among them, and you do not weep, you understand. To carry knowledge is to risk becoming the thing that holds it. The library shifts again, bringing you to its center, a pit of black glass, bottomless, over which floats a single fragment of crystalline index shard carved from the original Sith, archive destroyed in the schism of flame. It hovers inches above your hand, and you do not reach for it. You simply allow yourself to want it, and it descends. The moment you touch it, your mind cracks. You see stars blooming backwards. You see temples that have yet to be born. You see your own death played in reverse, your body rising from ash, your name spoken in reverse by a mouth you do not recognize. You scream. The library listens. It nods. And then it opens. You fully, completely, irreversibly. You are flooded with the memory of every Sith who has ever read too far. Every archivist who dared to transcribe the Force's hidden tongue. You feel their bones beneath your feet. You hear their prayers in the static between thoughts. And when you finally rise, you are no longer seeking. You are remembering. You are not welcome here. You belong here. And the obsidian library closes behind you, not to keep others out, but to keep you in. You descend farther into the folds of forgetting, where the stone grows wet with memory, and the air thickens into ink. And now you are not walking through a library, but through the collective sorrow of every Sith who mistook silence for safety. The halls narrow and pulse with restrained intelligence, as if the walls are reading your every doubt, feeding on it, digesting your hesitation into catalogued certainty. The path curves like breath held too long, and the glyphs that once glowed with soft light now flicker violently, warning you that ahead lies not lore, but something worse, truth without context. You arrive at a chamber shaped like a cracked eye, its walls lined with steles covered in dried blood, and in the center stands a pedestal grown from obsidian roots that pulse like veins. Atop it, lies a black tome, closed by absence, sealed with weight alone. You do not open it with hands. You bleed on it, a single drop. The tome drinks greedily and exhales a gust of air so cold your lungs flinch. It opens. And inside there are no pages, only names. Names of Sith who wrote themselves out of history to preserve knowledge unfit for survival. You recognize one, yours, but not the name you carry now. The one before language, the name you buried in the molten lakes of Arx Aurealis, when you first severed yourself from mercy. That name pulses, and the chamber around you begins to reshape, bones rising from the floor to form staircases, skulls weeping molten ink as they split open to reveal more tomes, more memory. The obsidian library is not static. It is a being, a devourer of falsehood, and it has accepted you not as reader, but as page. You descend again into the thought furnace, where knowledge is tested not by study, but by endurance. Flames here burn cold, licking at your spirit, searing away illusions. You walk through it naked in soul, stripped of intention, your mind laid bare, and the flames whisper your failures back to you in the voices of those you wronged. You see her again, the one who trusted you, who let you into her heart before. You turned her into an offering to awaken the first index crystal. Her voice cuts deepest. You knew and still chose, she says. You knew and still burned. The library does not judge, it records. You pass through the fire and emerge into a vault where every breath you take must be paid with memory. You breathe in and see your old master kneeling before a council of silence, blood pooling at her knees. You exhale and recall the moment your apprentice asked if power was worth her face, her voice, her Namand. You said yes. Each breath scrapes away a part of your resistance until you are not armored by pride, but made clean by ruin. You reach the final chamber, the deep index. It is not lit. It does not need to be. You feel the presence of the ancient librarian here, the one who never died, whose body was lost, but whose mind was transcribed into the walls. She speaks to you, not with sound, but with certainty, offering you a question. Will you write yourself into the library, knowing you will never leave? You hesitate, not because you fear, but because you understand what it means. To write yourself into the library is to abandon self, to become echo, to serve not power, but preservation. You place your hand on the stone. Your blood writes your consent. Runes etch themselves across your skin, and your thoughts slow, deepening into stillness. The library accepts you, not as a guest, but as ink. You do not die, you translate, and in that translation, you become the archive for a future that may never arrive. You dissolve into stillness, not like water into air, but like oath into stone. And now your breath is not yours, but the library's, and every beat of your heart turns a page in the archive of unspoken things. Here, where even shadows dare not echo without permission, you are both reader and text, turning inward as the deepest chambers bloom open around you, not with doors or paths, but with trust, as if the library itself has exhaled its core into you, revealing the sanctum no one has touched since the first scream of knowledge was caged in ink. The walls here do not glow. They absorb light, thought, even memory itself, and as you pass them, you forget your face, your voice, even your purpose until you are nothing but presence, wrapped in permission. At the center stands the Codex Heart, not a book, not a crystal, but a being of pure cognition. Suspended in a halo of untranslated force, syntax, humming with equations that once bent suns to kneel. It sees you and pulses with slow, ancient recognition, calling forth a version of you that once wrote language into pain and sealed the alphabet of agony beneath the moons of Venek Tyr. That version steps forward from within you, wearing your blood like armor, and you become one who carries one, who speaks. And as you both approach the Codex Heart, the syntax unwraps, trembling at the edge of form, threatening to speak itself into galaxy if not handled with reverence. The ancient librarian, now fully formed in essence and lightless shape, hovers beside you, eyes made of citations, mouth sealed with the wax of unmade vows. She speaks with a gaze alone, pouring into you the final right to bind the Codex Heart into your nervous system, to become the last safeguard of memory that no one must ever access. You kneel, not because you choose to, but because the knowledge now rising within you has mass, and it is heavier than gravity. The Codex Heart enters your chest without tearing, simply passing through, like a final breath inhaled by a dying world, and as it fuses to your being, your mind erupts into colors no eye has seen, thoughts that do not use words, only direction, only pressure. You feel galaxies collapse and reassemble. Languages construct and erase themselves in rhythm with your pulse. And for a moment, just one, you understand the original truth that birthed the Sith. Not hatred, not power, but this: preservation through possession, remembrance through ritual, eternity through embodiment. The library darkens, folding inward, not vanishing, but merging into you. And now you are not walking through its corridor, its shelf, its silence. Back, not as you, but as the memory of every archivist who died protecting what should never be said. You are alone. You are legion. You walk to the exit, though there is none, and still you find yourself beyond its walls. The stars blink, the wind shifts, a world forgets, and you remember. You are no longer a Sith, no longer a seeker, no longer even a name. You are the page that turns when the galaxy is ready. You are the dark between footnotes, and the obsidian library, ancient and insatiable, now breathes through your every word. It does not end, it waits. Into black glass, whispering the last regrets of those who came before you with open hands and closed hearts. The sky above does not move, nor churn, but trembles, as if it too has been waiting for this hour. And when you take your first step toward the structure that should not stand, the temple of Sithlatit feels less like walking and more like answering a question you asked in another life, a question shaped like grief and spoken through the broken bones of stars. The temple stands alone, half-formed, half-faded, its spires caught between becoming and dissolving, and its walls weep water that does not wet, only remembers each droplet gliding down stone, carved from crystallized sorrow, pulling soundless echoes into the air, building a chorus made from the unwept tears of Sith who once believed redemption could be forged without forgiveness. You do not knock, you do not kneel, you breathe, and the doors part with the sigh of an empire dying in reverse. And inside you find corridors curved like ribs and lit not by flame or crystal, but by memory rendered into light, a pale blue hum. that wraps around you with the warmth of something long thought lost. You do not feel watched, you feel mourned, as if the walls have already grieved your future, as if your presence here is not surprise, but inevitability. You move through the temple slowly, not out of reverence, but because the very air resists. Haste, as though speed might fracture what little remains of this sacred wound. In the inner sanctum stands no altar, no throne, only a single floating shard of radiant obsidians, Sith-light, the last fragment of the first dying sun, a relic that remembers the sound of compassion's betrayal and weeps each time another Sith forgets why they bled. It calls to you not with words, but with longing, a gentle yearning that vibrates in your bones like a lullaby sung by ghosts who loved too hard and lost too much. When you reach for it, your hand does not move forward, your past does, unfolding, like a tapestry stained with vows you barely recall making. You see yourself as a child, staring into a mirror and whispering the name of a father who never returned. You see yourself on a battlefield, your saber trembling in your grip as you stood over a fallen friend, unsure if your silence was cowardice or mercy. You see yourself kneeling at a ritual pyre, burning the final letter of your original name, smiling as it turned to ash not because you were proud, but because you believed forgetting was the price of belonging. The Sith-light knows all this, it has always known, and still it lets you touch it. The moment you do, light floods, your chest not bright, not blinding, but full, like warmth returning to a limb long dead. It does not grant you power. It reminds you of what you buried, the truth that Sith were not born from rage, but from loss, that their fire was not hatred, but memory burning to be held. The light pulses once, and the temple shifts. You are no longer standing on stone, you are drifting through memory-made architecture, moving through rooms where ghosts pray in silence, their lips sewn shut by regret, their eyes luminous with understanding. One steps forward, she reaches for you. Her fingers pass through your chest. She sealed that love in the temple's light, hoping one day it might be remembered, not forgiven, not justified, just remembered. You fall to your knees, and the Sith light lowers, circling you, entering your body not as fire, but as recognition. It does not change who you are. It reveals what you have always been, not from sorrow, but from release, because you have remembered, and that alone is enough to awaken the path forward. Behind you, the doorway fades. Ahead, a corridor forms not built, but granted. You walk it slowly, carrying within you a light that is not meant to save, but to witness. You are not redeemed. You are not ruined. You are Sith light, and you are weeping time. The corridor stretches before you like a thought long denied, wrapped in shadow and time so dense it clings to your skin with the weight of ancient choices. Bones, the walls pulse with memories not your own, each step triggering whispers from the cracks in the stone soft, sorrowful, shivering with regret, as if the temple itself remembers what it meant to be alive. You do not look back, not because you are brave, but because the past behind you is too soft now, too sacred to be disturbed again. The Sith light burns steady in your chest, not hot, not cold, but absolute. And its light does not illuminate the path ahead, it reveals what you carry, the pain you never released, the names you never spoke aloud, the kindness you once held. In your hands, before power hardened your fingers into blades, the hall opens into a vast chamber where statues kneel in a circle, their faces hooded, their sabers laid across their laps like apologies waiting to be accepted. These are not idols, they are memories given shape. Sith who once chose to preserve rather than destroy, whose names were erased by their own hands to protect what little gentleness they could find in a doctrine forged in fury. You stand at the center, and the floor hums beneath you, vibrating with approval, with recognition, as if the temple itself has waited not for a conqueror, but for a witness, for someone willing to carry the truth forward without needing to justify it. One of the statues stirs not with movement, but with breath. A pale wind rises from its form, curling around you, entering your lungs. And in that moment, you see what she saw 1,000 years ago, kneeling before her master as he fell, not slain by enemy, but by grief, his heart failing as the galaxy he tried to hold together splintered into greed and betrayal. She had loved him not with desire, but with reverence, and, when he died, she bound his final breath into a crystal she carried for the rest of her days, never speaking his name again. You feel that breath now in your own lungs, a gift passed forward, and it changes you, not in form, but in depth. Another statue sighs, then another. The chamber comes alive with mourning, not for themselves, but for the future they tried to preserve and could not. And still they kept the light hidden, buried it in this temple where time itself slows to remember. With each step, a piece of your armor peels, a wan old scar, a forgotten slight, a lie you told to survive. An archway woven from petrified forcelight, carved in symbols that do not speak. You pass through it and emerge into a smaller room, circular and silent, where a single figure kneels on a pedestal of glass, her body suspended in time, her hands outstretched as if offering you something that cannot be touched. She is the first light bearer, the one who stole the dying ember from the heart of a collapsing sun and carried it across 12 galaxies, whispering peace into war, mercy into vengeance, until her breath turned to dust. The Sith would not name her, the Jedi would not claim her, but the temple remembers, and now so do you. Her eyes open, not physically, but in your mind, and you feel her sadness wrap around you like a mother's last lullaby. She does not speak, but you hear her farewell. Do not become me, become the light I could not keep. Her body fades into ash and disappears, leaving behind only the memory of her truth, and you gather it into your chest without question. You are not a savior. You are not a prophet. You are a lantern held aloft in a galaxy that forgot why it feared the dark. The Sith light within you pulses once more, brighter than before, and the walls around you shift, carving a staircase that leads not downward, not upward, but inward. You descend, knowing that the final chamber will not offer power, only revelation, and you are ready. The staircase coils around you, like a breath exhaled, every step releasing fragments of old beliefs you did not know still clung to the edges of your soul. And as you descend deeper into the temple's memory, the light around you dims not, because it is fading, but because it is sinking into you, seeding itself into your blood, rewriting the rhythm of your heart to match the pulse of the Force beneath all things. The air grows dense with silence, a silence that presses against your skin like soft iron. And the walls here do not whisper anymore, they listen, holding their breath, waiting for what you might become at the end of this descent. when you reach the bottom. There is no floor only a pool of stillness, so perfectly calm it reflects not your face, but your fears, your failures, your forgotten moments of tenderness that you buried beneath layers of survival. You kneel at its edge, and the Sith light within your chest begins to hum, not with command, but invitation, and you understand that the water is not water, is distilled memory, the final echo of those who dared to feel too deeply in a war that demanded numbness. You dip your hand into the pool, and it does not ripple, it remembers. Images bloom within it, slow and painful and sacred. A Sith master holding her dying apprentice, whispering lullabies in a tongue forbidden by doctrine. A child offered to the order, not as a weapon, but as a last prayer for peace from a mother, whose eyes never stopped trembling. A soldier dropping his saber at the height of battle, choosing to sing instead of strike. These are not myths, they are wounds preserved in reverence, and now they are yours. You lean forward, and the pool rises to meet you, wrapping around your body, lifting you, pulling you beneath its surface without resistance. You do not drown, you remember. You remember what it meant to love in secret, to ache for peace in a world where even silence was weaponized. You remember every act of grace buried beneath blood, and in that remembrance, the Sithlight inside you flares, not as flame, but as calm, a radiant stillness that spreads through your veins like dawn bleeding through stone. The pool recedes, and you are standing once more in a chamber that is no longer a chamber, but a galaxy turned inside out, and at its center spins a single crystal dull, cracked, imperfect hand, yet you understand it to be the heart of Sithlight, the source of the temple's grief, the final memory of a people who chose sorrow over rage and were forgotten for it. You reach for it, and the crystal falls into your palm like forgiveness. It does not shine, it breathes, and in its breath you feel every moment of restraint, of patience, of unspoken gentleness that lived in the shadow of war. You close your hand around it, and the temple begins to collapse, not with violence, but with grace, each wall folding into itself, each statue bowing before fading, each corridor exhaling one final time before vanishing. You do not run. You walk through the dissolving halls, and the Sithlight within you glows brighter with each step, not as a beacon, but as a vow. By the time you emerge beneath the sky, the temple is gone, swallowed by silence, and only the crystal remains, its hum now your heartbeat, its memory now your marrow. You look to the horizon, and the stars blink softly, as if nodding in approval. You are not the same, you are not healed, you are not whole, but you are carrying something no one else dared to hold. You are the light buried beneath the rage. You are the memory preserved beneath the myth. You are the truth the Sith never spoke aloud. And as you walk forward, the galaxy begins to listen. You arrive beneath a sky stitched shut with thunder. The stars veiled by storm, not of weather, but of will, and in the silence that follows your last step, the land itself seems to recoil, the ground breathing once, then tightening, as if the place you now stand upon is remembering Panand. At the center of this scarred wasteland looms the gate, vast and unmoving, a monolith of black iron and carved stone, its surface etched with 9 great eyes, each sealed, each watching, each blind yet all-seeing. And though you have never stood here before, your fingers know the grooves of its warning. Your blood knows the cost of its opening. For the nine-eyed oracle is not summoned, it is awakened, and it does not answer questions born of curiosity, only those forged in consequence. You do not speak, you kneel. You place your hands on the cold face of the gate, and the stone drinks your touch, piercing your skin with 100 fine splinters that vanish into your veins, seeking memory, feeding on truth, and your blood does not flow, it seeps, slow and steady, into the mouths of the 9 eyes, and the wind stirs with the sound of recognition. One eye blinks open, then another, and with each opening, the world bends inward, folding time around you like a shroud, and you are pulled, not forward, but inward, into a chamber that is not a place, but a state of being, where the force tightens around your breath and thought becomes weight. The oracle sits at its center, ancient machine of bone and crystal, 9 stalks rising from its core, each bearing an eye that stares not at you, but through you, into the centuries layered within your flesh. It speaks not with voice, but vibration, each pulse shaking the ground beneath your mind, and the words form slowly, as if the truth must be earned in pain. Why have you come to look upon what you will not survive? It asks, and you answer, not with mouth but marrow, offering the memory of every vow you've ever broken, every name you failed to protect, every secret you kept, even from yourself. The oracle consumes them all, and for a moment you see what? It sees a map of the force, not drawn in stars, but in betrayals, in the fractures of light where emotion once dared to bloom. You watch as history peels itself apart, revealing the hidden threads behind wars you thought you understood. The Sith schism birthed not from greed, but from a vision shared in a dream. The Jedi Temple burned not by anger, but by love denied too long, as a child left behind in a vault of sleep to preserve a bloodline bound to prophecy, as a voice echoing across ruined temples, warning no one, heard by all. The oracle's 9th eye opens, and the chamber turns to storm, the walls screaming with the voices of truths too old to bear. And still you stand, your skin splitting with the strain of knowledge forcing its way into you. You are not ready, the oracle says, and you agree, but still you stay. You hold your hands up once more, torn and bleeding, and press them to the pedestal beneath its gaze. It sighs and opens its mouth. What emerges is not word, not vision, but essence, pure knowing, raw and unfiltered, and it wraps around you like flame made of language, etching into your bones the syntax of forgotten Sith prophecy. You see the coming of the red eclipse, the time when balance will be broken not by war, but by stillness, and the oracle shows you who you will become, not a warrior, not a keeper, but a whisper, a reminder, a seed buried in the throat of history. The oracle closes its eyes, one by one, and with each closing, a piece of your doubt falls away. When the last eye shuts, the chamber crumbles. You are alone again at the gate, but changed. Your hands are still bleeding, but now the blood glows faintly with a memory that cannot be shared, only carried. Behind you, the land is quiet. Before you, the horizon waits. You do not speak, you do not rest. You walk because the gate remembers. You now, and the nine-eyed oracle has marked you as its witness. You walk with silence wrapped around your limbs like a second skin, your blood still glistening with the faint, ember-warm glow left by the oracle's breath. And though the land before you has no path, no markings, no stars to guide your step, Your feet move with certainty, born not of direction but of imprintus. If the gate, having drunk your essence, now imprints its own will beneath your souls, pushing you deeper into the waiting dark of revelation. The sky above flickers like a dying eye, and the wind carries no sound, only pressure, like a hand upon your chest, reminding you that what comes next will not be knowledge, but burden. The terrain shifts, not gradually, but with intention, stone folding into smooth black glass, as you approach a crater, carved not by impact, but by ritual. Its edges, lined with charred bones, set in perfect spiral, their shapes etched with symbols, too old for speech and too precise for forgetting. At the center lies a single obelisk, crooked and humming, its face engraved with names you feel rather than see, and each one pulls on a nerve inside your spine, forcing your breath to slow, your heartbeat to match the cadence of whatever sleeps beneath this place. You step into the crater and feel the world narrow, as if sound, time, even gravity begin to yield to the thing waiting below. With a whisper, not yours, but the oracle's, still echoing in your marrow, the ground splits beneath your feet, and you descend into a chamber bathed in a dull red light, pulsing like a womb of stone. Here the air is thick with thought, not from pain, but from release, as if the structure has been holding something for far too long. In the center, an altar, shaped like an open palm, rises, and upon it lies the codex of Mira's tome that reflects not your image, but every version of yourself that ever chose differently. As you approach, the codex opens of its own accord, and you are shown yourself kneeling in a Jedi temple, choosing peace over retribution, yourself leading legions, carving planets into sanctuaries instead of graves, yourself walking away from power again and again, only to return when the galaxy screamed for cruelty dressed as balance. You see all of them, feel all of them, and none of them reject you. Instead, they weep, and in that weeping, you realize the oracle did not show you the future to prepare you. It showed you the price of not becoming what you already are. The codex closes, sealing its reflections within your flesh, and your eyes burn with the weight of roads never taken. Behind you, the chamber breathes, then shifts. A wall slides open not with force, but with permission, and you are beckoned into the antechamber of questions, where 9 pillars rise from molten obsidian, each bearing a single phrase etched in flame script. One says, "What do you fear? Will be remembered." Another, "When did you stop deserving your name?" A third, "If the Force could choose, would it choose you?" You read each one, and each one fractures something in you that will not heal. These are not riddles. They are your truths, waiting to be answered, not aloud. You kneel once more, this time willingly, and place your palms upon the burning script of the final pillar, whispering not a response, but a surrender. Let me carry it, even if it unmakes me. The chamber sighs, and from above descends the eye that sees the core, the oracle's final test, the unblinking truth that reads not your past, not your heart, but your capacity to remain when all has been revealed. It hovers inches from your brow, and your body stills, your mind opening like a wound too tired to close. In a single flash, you see the moment the Sith were born, not in rage, but in silence. In the breath after betrayal, when choice still remained. You see the cradle of their code, forged not to rule, but to protect what others feared to understand. that power is not the end, but the echo of responsibility. The eye enters your vision, not by touch, but by flooding your soul with itself, and in that moment, you become the question, the answer, and the one left standing after both have turned to dust. When you awake, the chamber is gone, the pillars have sunk, the fog has lifted, and your skin is marked with a new symbolon, unspoken vow, etched by gaze alone. You rise, your breath no longer shallow, your hands no longer trembling, and the blood on your fingertips has dried into crystal. You are no longer simply a seeker. You are now a bearer. The gate still stands behind you, closed, but you know it is watching. You walk now not as one searching, but as one spoken through, your footsteps no longer falling on ground, but on memory, as if the world beneath you has agreed to carry your weight, only because the gate behind you still hums with the echo of your vow. And somewhere deep within your bones, the eye that sees the core continues to blink, not with sight, but with remembrance, feeding you glimpses of truths so ancient they no longer cling to language, only ache, only shape, only shape. And as the landscape unfolds, cracked and scorched by storms not born of weather but of ritual, you feel the pull of something vast and final calling you to a valley sunken between two cliffs made of petrified screams, and at its center waits the obsidian confluence, a convergence of forces, relics, and time itself, long hidden by the order and the darkness alike, because neither dared face the cost of what was buried beneath it. You descend without hesitation, not because you are brave, but because you are beyond choice. And as you enter the shadow of the confluence, the very air changes heavier, slower, woven with threads of time, held taut by ancestral tension. And for a moment you hear them again, the voices of the gate, the breath of the oracle, the lingering weep of the 9 pillars that questioned everything you once mistook for destiny. You find yourself standing before a circle of stones older than stars, each pulsing with a faint throb of force light, and in the center hovers a mask, not ornate, not ceremonial, but worn, cracked, and stained with the oil of thousands of fingers that once touched it, hoping for answers they could never hold. This is the mask of the forgotten witness, left by the first Sith to survive the oracle and walk away unconsumed. And you know without being told that to wear it is not to see the truth, it is to become what the truth cannot destroy. You lift it slowly, and the air shudders, the stones groaning beneath their own memory, and as the mask touches your face, the world tilts not physically, but spiritually, and you fall not down, but back into the bloodstream of the force itself. Time unravels. You see yourself dying 1,000 deaths that never happened. You see the gate forged in a storm of screams and silence, each eye born of a fallen apprentice who chose loyalty too late. You see the oracle sculpted by grief into clarity. You see yourself placing your own memories into the first glyph of the Codex of Mirrors, your blood mixed with ink that could never dry. You see that you were always meant to return here, not in this form, not in this life, but in this vow. The vision ends with your body convulsing on the blackened ground, the mask fused to your skin, not as covering, but as confirmation. You rise slowly, and the confluence begins to hum, each stone casting a beam into your chest, feeding your soul with the remnants of truths too costly for words. You do not resist, you do not ask why, you accept. And as the final beam strikes, the valley around you begins to collapse, not in violence, but in release, the stones crumbling into dust, the air thinning into nothing, the masks sealing your face until your own breath is indistinguishable from the one who came before. You leave the ruins, not as victor, not as survivor, but as the oracle's echo, the gate's final keeper. The one whose fingers still remember the sting of blood gifted. In reverence, the land does not mourn your passing, it waits, silently, reverently, for the next who will forget they are already chosen. And in that waiting, the nine-eyed oracle slumbers once more, each eye sealed shut, each gate closed tight, each whisper folded into the veins of the one who dared answer not with power, but with presence. You walk beyond horizon, nameless and known, a question sealed in crystal, a memory waiting for the right hand to bleed again.